Hello and welcome to the French Grand Prix driver rankings video post-race. However, this being the first race that I didn't actually watch live this season, it's a little bit difficult for me to actually provide rankings and at least accurate rankings for the drivers this Grand Prix. So hopefully I'm going to be relying on you guys to follow the link in the top line in the description to submit your driver rankings following the Google Docs form. But not to worry, I have watched a small little highlights reel of the Grand Prix and also spoken to a few people who did watch it live, so hopefully my rankings are a little bit fair, but I do know the ranking drivers on a race that I've not actually seen is a little bit on the difficult side. We will also be going over the Audience Predictions Championship as one person absolutely smashed it, and we have a new highest scoring round so far. So without further ado, let us jump on into today's video, and that is the driver rankings for the French Grand Prix. But we will start with the championships and take a look at the drivers first. It is Max Verstappen who now leads Hamilton by just 12 points. There is now a significant 35-point gap to Perez, who is in P3, and Bottas is still behind Norris. However, it was Bottas who did actually get past Charles Leclerc, so he has moved up to P6, as he was originally P7. But from here, we will now take a look at the Constructors' Championship, and it is Red Bull who are now stretching their legs for the first time in the Turbo Hybrid era at the top of the Constructors' Championship. The first team to break 200 points, and they are 37 clear of Mercedes. It is equally the first time that the team has won 3 races in a row at the Turbo Hybrid era. But from the championships, we will now take a look at the Audience Prediction Championships for the French Grand Prix. And it is Gemma Gibson who scores 21 out of 25, scoring their bonus statement as well as getting 4 out of the 5 drivers correct in the top 5 for the Grand Prix. Closely followed by Doctor Who channel and Evan Darcy once again, the current championship leader, having an incredible outing here in France. We then have Archie on 18, Elliot on 17, Joshua on 16, Alan I've tried to say this name before, Pereira on 14. We also have myself on 13. I am in the second leaderboard. I did not have a good French Grand Prix, joint with Leroy and Pablo and Callum as well. Then we've got Danielle B on 12, Matej on 12 as well. And the second half of the field for the entrance for the French Grand Prix looked like this. Hal, our battle so close. We are 2 points separated in the French Grand Prix. Yourself on 11, myself on 13. We then have people like Gear Down Aviation and also Mattia Binotto are all on 9. And totaling up all of these scores throughout the season so far, the leaderboard looks a little bit like this. Evan Darcy is the first person to break the 100-point mark on 103 so far. Then there is a 13-point gap to a Doctor Who channel who is joint on 90 with Joe Bisho. I am 6 points back in P4, and then Arturo Salazar is on 78, along with Gemma Gibson after their extremely high scoring round in France. Then quickly looking down that list, we do have people like Cosmos, Gear Down Aviation again, Kit BM, Minion023. Then in the second half, we have a couple of the new runners who haven't entered into as many of the races. And then finally, we have the second half leaderboard as well. But not to worry, for all of those people that have only entered just a couple of races, I do have a second table to take a look at that averages out the scores for the entrance that you have made. And that leaderboard is again topped by Evan Darcy, an average score of 14.7 out of 25 for the 7 races that we've had so far. Then we have new people like Alex Santiago, Brock from the Forum of Racing, and then also Madhav Singh. They are all new people and they are in the top leaderboard. And also above myself, I have an average score of 12.0 throughout these first 7 races. So if you see yourself in this top portion of the table, then you are doing exceptionally well so far in this championship predictions. We then have the middle portion of the entrance so far. We've got people like Amelia Swan, Channel Infinity, Elliot, Adam Sturgeon, Carrie Slaughter, Mufasa as well. And then we have the bottom end of the runners just here, with still probably my favourite name on there, Mika Tukkanen, scoring 6.0 on average across their entries. Now, if you guys want to get involved with this Audience Prediction Championships, then make sure to catch my videos that drop on the Thursday before each of the Grand Prix weekends, in which you guys can get your predictions submitted. But with all of that out of the way now, we will take a look at my driver rankings. But like I said, I haven't actually watched this race live, so perhaps my rankings are going to be a little bit fluctuating for this Grand Prix. But we are going in 2020 championship order, so we start with Mercedes drivers, then Red Bull drivers, etc., down to Williams. And we start today with Lewis Hamilton, and I have scored him 15 out of 20. Not sure if I actually explained this yet. 20 is the best score that they could possibly achieve, and then 1 is the worst score that they could possibly achieve. So if you do follow that link in the top line of the description, then make sure to bear that in mind, and also take into consideration qualifying, as we'll be comparing my average ranks in this video to your audience average ranks as well, to my data algorithm output, which should probably come on Tuesday or Wednesday. But anyway, back to Lewis Hamilton. He scores 15 out of 20. He got a decent start, or well, fairly level with Max Verstappen. It's just Verstappen went a little bit wide into turn 2, lost the car, and then Hamilton managed to get back past. However, they opted to stay out. When Verstappen pitted from the lead to go onto fresh tyres, Mercedes obviously were going to do the opposite. They have the incentive to do the opposite. They're not even going to gain by doing the same thing, by coming into the pits. They're still going to be in second, and they may not have the quickest car. So it's better for them to gamble by staying out like they did. It's just unfortunate that Max Verstappen managed to catch him just at the last portion of the race. And from Hamilton, we now take a look at Valtteri Bottas. And again, a much better weekend for Valtteri Bottas. Whether it's this chassis change that's happened between the two drivers, who knows? The conspiracy theories are obviously going to be flying, but 14 out of 20 for Valtteri Bottas. A very good qualifying and a very good race. Yes, he went backwards, but he did slate the team quite a lot on the team radio, saying lots of curse words to them about why did you put me onto a one-stop strategy when I told you it was going to be two-stop, etc. Then from Bottas, we take a look at Max Verstappen, 18 out of 20. Apart from that small little mistake into turn 2, it was an absolutely exceptional Grand Prix for Max Verstappen. He did absolutely everything right. He put in a mega qualifying lap to go 3 or 2.5 tenths faster than Lewis Hamilton overall, and then the race, it was just absolutely superb. That final stint on the medium tyres was just mega. And then to his teammate, Sergio Perez, 17. He is literally the tyre preserving king, going longer on those first set of tyres and then pitting to get the massive fresh compound advantage over Valtteri Bottas to get past and onto the podium for the second race in a row. I believe that is the first time in Sergio Perez's career that he's been on consecutive podiums. Please correct me in the comments if I am wrong about that. But then from Sergio Perez, we take a look at Daniel Ricciardo, 18 out of 20. From an okay qualifying, being somewhat behind Lando Norris, to produce some overtaking masterclasses and an undercut of the age to get past Gasly and also Carlos Sainz in the struggling Ferrari, he put in the work to get up to P6. So 18 out of 20 for Daniel Ricciardo. And then his teammate also scores very highly, 18 out of 20 for Lando Norris. Some of those overtakes were absolutely phenomenal. On Fernando Alonso and on, I can't remember who the other person was, but they were just both awesome overtakes. The McLarens had so much pace and both drivers score 18 out of 20. Then moving away from Norris, we take a look at Sebastian Vettel, 14 out of 20. It was a qualifying for Sebastian Vettel, not making it through into Q3, but he made up for it in the Grand Prix. He scored some points once again for Aston Martin, and again a very decent Grand Prix for Vettel. Then we take a look at Lance Stroll. His teammate also scores 14. A lot of matching for teammates in this Grand Prix. Qualifying, that really wasn't his fault whatsoever. I mean, partly because his first lap got deleted in qualifying, which is why he only had a 2-minute 12 lap time set in Q1, but the red flag was absolutely nothing to do with him whatsoever. And then in the Grand Prix, he managed to fight his way back from the back of the grid all the way just outside of the points. Actually, no, he was P10. He scored a point. So yeah, a very, very, very decent job from Lance Stroll. Then from Lance Stroll and Aston Martin, we take a look at Alpine. 13 out of 20 for Fernando Alonso. A very good qualifying to get into Q3 and a sort of average race. He may have moved forward one position, I can't quite remember off the top of my head, but overall, nothing too stellar like the McLarens or the Aston Martins behind him, but nothing too bad like the Ferraris. Hence why he scored 13 out of 20. Then from Fernando Alonso, we take a look at Esteban Ocon. 9 out of 20. This was again a little bit disappointing, seeing one of the Alpines perform very, very well, and then all weekend seeing Ocon not perform very well. It's a very interesting case, and sort of what we have seen with Mercedes a little bit this season, where one car performs really well and then the other doesn't. It's a little bit like that, where Ocon just seemed to struggle. He didn't get through to Q3 like Alonso did, and then he just sort of went backwards in the Grand Prix. But from the Frenchman Esteban Ocon, we now take a look at the Ferraris. 6 out of 20 for Charles Leclerc. Absolutely amazing qualifying for both Ferraris, especially Carlos Sainz. Not so much Charles Leclerc, but definitely Q3 and P7, I believe he was on the grid, was a very, very good start. But to end P16 with no real issues. He didn't spin, there were no yellow flags. Again, it was a race with no yellow flags or safety cars or stoppages or anything like that. They just didn't have any pace whatsoever. It was like 2020 all over again. And from Charles Leclerc finishing P16 to Carlos Sainz, who again was outside of the points, he scores 8 out of 20. Just because he had that much of a better qualifying, he was P5 and was holding off some of the other cars around, attacking Sergio Perez in the opening stages of the Grand Prix. But again, he just slipped outside of the points. Not as far as Charles Leclerc, hence why he only scores 8 out of 20 rather than 6 out of 20. Then from the Ferraris, we take a look at Pierre Gasly, 16 out of 20. An exceptional qualifying to be P6, and then an exceptional Grand Prix to be P7, to hold off the faster cars behind him, apart from one of the McLarens, as they were again in a league of their own in that midfield behind the Mercedes and the 2 Red Bulls. Gasly was there. He was faster than the Alpines, he was faster than the Aston Martins, much faster than the Ferraris. He is having an incredible, incredible season. However, from Gasly, we now take a look at his teammate, Yuki Tsunoda. He sort of made up for it in the Grand Prix. He didn't score any points, but he made up for his very, very poor qualifying. He's caused 3 red flags in qualifying so far this season. He definitely needs to buck up on his consistency and his just sort of driving style, I suppose. He has a lot of raw pace and raw pace potential. He just needs to hone it and just sort of shine it and buff it up, and then it'll become better. But obviously it's his first season, so I'm holding off my super criticism of him all the way up until the second half of the season, where he can have a full summer break to look at all of the data, cross-reference everything and stuff like that, and hopefully improve for the second half. But from Yuki Tsunoda scoring 12 out of 20, we now take a look at Kimi Räikkönen. 10 out of 20. An iffy qualifying and then just an iffy race. Perhaps this could be a 8 or something, maybe even a 7. Yeah, I'm going to biff this down to a 7. I've simply done that because he just didn't do anything. Nothing happened. He had a very poor qualifying, especially compared to Giovinazzi, and then he had a very poor race, again, especially compared to Giovinazzi. He ended up P16 or P17 or something like that. That's not where the Alfa Romeos should be. And speaking of his teammate, 11 out of 20. A very good weekend overall for Giovinazzi. Obviously, he wasn't super close to the points like George Russell was, but we'll get on to him in a little bit. But he got through into Q2 and a very, very decent qualifying. And also just generally a weekend. But from Giovinazzi and Alfa Romeo, we now take a look at Haas. And Mick Schumacher himself scores 12. Looking at that, I think that's too high. I think that's too high, don't you? Because ultimately, he got through into Q2, which really does deserve to bump his score up just a little squidge towards the 12, but then he crashed. Then in the race, he went backwards from wherever he started in like P15 or something like that. So perhaps it needs to be a 10. I'm going to put it as 10. Eesh, that's actually 2 changes so far that I've made so far as of recording this video. But not to worry, it's not the end of the world. 10 out of 20 for Mick Schumacher. Whereas Nikita Mazepin scores 9. Again, not really much happened with Nikita Mazepin. No yellow flags, no nothing, no crashes, no incidents. Lots of people predicted in the audience prediction championships that there would be an incident involving Mazepin. There was not. It was just an average weekend for Mazepin. I'm not 100% sure how far behind Schumacher was, so perhaps I might bump this down to an 8 if I find out all of the lap data when I start crunching that in the next few days. But then from Mazepin, we take a look at George Russell. 13 out of 20. A very good qualifying, once again getting through to Q2 for the 7th consecutive Grand Prix. And then in the race, he was P12. So very close to the points. And that is on pace. In a race that had no yellow flags, no safety cars, no red flags, nothing, nada, zilch. This was on pace. P12 on pace. That is exceptional for Williams. So 13 out of 20 is his score. However, his teammate Nicholas Latifi ends up with 10. Qualifying was good. He was just 0.02 off of George Russell in qualifying and getting through into Q2 and then also possibly outperforming George Russell. However, the race, very disappointing in the Grand Prix. Again, he was the slowest apart from the 2 Haas cars. And there we go, there are my driver rankings for the French Grand Prix all done and dusted. Please let me know in the comments down below whether you agree or disagree with exactly what I have said, but bear in mind I have not actually watched this Grand Prix live. It was the first one this season and unfortunately probably the first of many this season, as like I've said in the past couple of videos, I am now working Friday, Saturday and of course Sunday. But hopefully the rest of the videos in my upload schedule should still be out on time-ish, plus or minus a day, depending on when I can actually get some time off work to actually make them. But that is all I've got for you today, guys. Please remember to follow the link in the top line of the description to submit your driver rankings for this weekend, and I will catch you in the next video with whatever and whenever I decide to make it. I'll see you guys then.